Nito in love. It has long been questioned who occupied the tomb next to Nito. It is far too big for Pinwheel. Pinwheel may be slightly bigger than us, but he is far from being a giant, and the coffin in question is deep within the tomb of giants. Even with 3 bodies fused together, he is dwarfed by the size of the coffin. So, we have a true mystery on our hands. As Miyazaki says in the Designworks interview, there are a huge number of things that, while present in the game, we make no attempt to explain to the player, and many more that they simply have no way of finding out. This lore is one of those cases. Welcome to Hawkshaw's attempt to unveil this hidden lore as we try and turn no way of finding out into a challenge that might be overcome. To assess the question of the absent tomb, why don't we first think upon Greek mythology? That Dark Souls took great inspiration from Greek myths is apparent everywhere in the game. However, one specific tale comes to mind in this case. This myth is in fact pre-Greek and comes in many different forms. Let us look into the most widely known interpretation. It is the story of Persephone. The story goes that Demeter, the goddess of harvest, who looks over the grains and fertility of the earth, had a beautiful daughter called Persephone. This daughter, as she walked through the fertile land, under the sun, happy, caught the eye of Pluto, the god of death and the underworld. He was infatuated. Day by day he watched her and became mad with love. Unlike most other gods, Pluto was monogamous. No myths concern any other love interest other than Persephone. He was a true romantic. Persephone was, he believed, his soulmate. However, he went about winning her in a less romantic manner. Pluto abducted Persephone and took her down to his underworld. Demeter, furious and struck by grief, according to some myths laid a curse on the world so that the harvests withered and died. Or in most interpretations, the weather reflected her emotions of grief and sadness. Barren winter began for the first time. The grain stopped growing and plants did not bear fruit. Zeus, faced with a barren world to rule over, tried to retrieve Persephone in order to bring an end to this eternal winter, but it was too late. Persephone had eaten some pomegranate seeds while in Pluto's domain, and so was bound to the underworld, eternally. Zeus and Pluto managed to strike a deal, however. A portion of Persephone's time would be spent below, and a portion above. So forever after, when Persephone returns to her mother Demeter, and to the land of the living, the crops grow and the harvest comes. When Persephone goes back to Pluto, the plants wither and die. The land becomes cold and barren. There are some slight differences to the tale in different interpretations or from different cultures, such as Demeter and Persephone can be one and the same goddess, or that Persephone eats the pomegranate voluntarily or is tricked. However, the core is enough for our purposes. So much so ancient. But what about Dark Souls? Well, let's look at a feature around Anor Londo that has previously been missed. It is everywhere, in the building with the painting, where the giants guard the room before Ornstein and Smough in the cathedral. Carved all around the capital is an image. An image of a woman surrounded by wheat, with a basket of bread at the bottom of the image and a furnace in the middle. In front of her, she may be baking bread, or, perhaps, leaning over a cot. The wheat is clear, however. This is the goddess of harvest and grain. This is a start. Let us look at another blurring between worship of the dead and of harvest. The god Pluto is often confused with Plutos, the god of wealth. Since much wealth was stored underground both naturally, in the form of gold, silver and gemstones, but also by humans for storage, the domain of the two are blurred. Even in some cases, in order to avoid referring to Pluto, Plutos was aware of referring to the god of the underworld without naming the god of death, which was a bad omen. In this way they were one and the same. The wealth humans stored underground was also the wealth of the harvest. Pithos were jars used for storage in ancient Greece. Grain was put inside, and they were buried under the earth so that they would keep through the winter. Later, due to their great size and because within the earth was believed to be closer to the realm of the dead, they were often used as coffins. Once again, if we look in Dark Souls, we find many such pots all over the catacombs, awfully close to the realm of Nito. Amongst shelves for corpses are pithos scattered everywhere. Pithos, brought down by those praising the god of grain, storing her harvest in the earth, or later used as coffins. And finally, in one room, without any shelves for corpses, with a pithos right next to our key item, what do we find? A Great Scythe. A scythe that can be reused as a weapon, but, as is stated in the item description, was originally a wheat harvesting tool. It is not a symbol of death, at least not originally. Instead, this very tool was used to harvest the bounty of the wheat crop and has been brought down below. What is a wheat harvesting tool doing down in the catacombs, away from light, fertility and grain? Perhaps the daughter of the goddess of grain, with her scythe equipped for the harvest, was overseeing a group taking down pithos full of grain to under the earth. Nito, having seen her each autumn for years carry out this duty for her mother, had fallen in love. He abducts her, or has his Gravelord servants carry out the task, and takes her deep into darkness, making her his mistress of death. We know that Nito and his covenant specialise in luring others to the domain of the dead, as shown by the Eye of Death item, which shows that these Eyes of Death are used to lure phantoms from other worlds. Or perhaps, as the name Persephone means the thresher of grain, and it's Demeter, not Persephone, who is traditionally depicted with the scythe. The scythe is the sign of a mother's failed attempt at retrieving her daughter, having converted her scythe into a weapon and charging down, blind with rage, into Nito's domain. Who was the mother in Dark Souls? Who was the daughter? Was the daughter tricked, or did she fall in love? And where is Nito's love now, if his mistress's tomb is empty? Has she deserted both Nito and Lordran, as light and life fade all around us? And why do we hear what seems to be a woman's scream when Nito casts the Gravelord Sword Dance miracle? Nito lies alone and unconcerned with what happens in the world around him. Perhaps this is not because he is unconcerned about what is happening to the flame, gods and humans, as is often argued. Instead, it is because he is mourning the loss of his loved one, becoming depressed and idle in his tomb. Or later, once he has become the Rotten, obsessing only about building statues to remember her by. He disregards all that is around him, because all misfortunes pale in comparison to being alone in the darkness without the one he loves.